There are seasons in life when nothing moves, when effort feels unanswered and time stretches longer than our courage. We wait for news, for healing, for purpose to reveal itself. And in that waiting, the heart grows tired. We begin to wonder if patience is just another word for being forgotten. But what if waiting is not emptiness? What if it is quiet work, shaping strength, preparing rebirth, teaching us the discipline to let go of what we cannot control? This is a story about patience, not as weakness but as a form of courage. A story about failure that becomes healing, about letting go that leads to peace, and about a journey that looks still from the outside but transforms everything within. In a small town where days passed slowly, there lived a man who believed his life had stalled, until waiting taught him how to hope again. The town woke slowly every morning, as if it had learned not to rush life. Shops opened late, roads stayed quiet. Even the light seemed to linger before touching the ground. It was the kind of place where time didn't push forward. It waited. And so did he. His name hardly mattered anymore, not because it was forgotten, but because he felt disconnected from it. He was a man in his early 30s, though life had already given him the tired eyes of someone older. Each morning, he followed the same routine with quiet discipline, waking before the sun, making coffee he barely tasted, staring out of a window that framed the same unchanged street. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't lost in the obvious ways. He worked, showed up, did what was expected. But beneath the structure of his days lived a heavy truth he never said out loud. His life felt paused. There was a version of himself he believed in once, a future shaped by purpose, by progress, by becoming more than this stillness. He had imagined movement, growth that could be measured, success that could be pointed to. Instead, he found himself waiting for clarity, waiting for motivation, waiting for something, anything, to tell him it was time to move forward. At night, when the town went silent, his thoughts grew louder. He questioned his patience, mistaking it for weakness. He wondered if discipline without visible reward was pointless, and sometimes he feared that waiting too long would slowly drain the courage he once had. Yet deep inside there was a quiet belief he couldn't extinguish, a fragile hope that this pause was not an ending, but a preparation. He didn't know it yet, but this stillness was shaping him in ways movement never could. Because some journeys don't begin with action. They begin with endurance, and this was his. When nothing around him changed, he decided he would. He began quietly, without announcements or promises. Earlier mornings, longer walks, a stricter routine. He read books about motivation and discipline, underlining sentences that spoke about strength, patience, and purpose. He told himself that consistency was enough, that if he kept moving, life would eventually move with him. And for a while, it seemed to work. Small victories appeared like brief flashes of light. He felt sharper, more focused. His body grew stronger. His days felt fuller. There was comfort in structure, in checking boxes, in knowing that at least he was trying. Each completed task whispered the same reassurance. You're getting closer. Closer to what, he wasn't sure, but closer felt better than still. People noticed too. They said he looked disciplined, grounded. You're doing well, they told him, and he nodded, holding on to those words like proof. He began measuring his worth by effort alone, believing that if he stayed disciplined long enough, the waiting would end on its own. But beneath the motivation lived impatience. He expected results to arrive on schedule. He watched the calendar as if time owed him something. When progress slowed or didn't show itself at all, frustration crept in. He worked harder, not wiser, pushed more, rested less. Discipline quietly turned into pressure. At night, exhaustion replaced peace. The routine that once gave him strength now demanded constant justification. Why am I still here? He wondered. Why does it feel like I'm running but not arriving? He didn't realize it then, but he wasn't learning patience. He was bargaining with time. He believed discipline was a transaction, effort in, certainty out. And life, quietly watching, prepared to teach him otherwise. Because progress that is rushed often collapses under its own weight. And the waiting was far from over. The fall didn't announce itself. It arrived disguised as an ordinary day. He woke with the same discipline, followed the same routine, and carried the same quiet belief that effort would eventually be rewarded. But by evening, something broke. Swiftly, completely, and without explanation that felt fair. The opportunity he had been working toward slipped away. Not slowly, not gently. One conversation, a few words spoken without ceremony, and it was over. The future he had rehearsed in his mind dissolved in seconds. No argument could save it. No extra effort could undo it. He nodded when he was told. He even thanked them. Discipline had taught him how to stay composed. But inside, something collapsed. On the walk home, the town felt different. Streets stretched longer, sounds faded. Even the familiar lights felt distant, as if they belonged to another life. He replayed every decision, every delay, every moment of waiting, asking the same question again and again. Was this my fault? That night, he sat in the dark without turning on a single light. The motivation that once carried him felt hollow now. Discipline, stripped of hope, became weight. The waiting, once tolerable, turned cruel. He had done everything right. He had stayed patient. He had shown up. And still, he failed. In the silence, a painful thought surfaced. What if this pause wasn't preparation? What if it was proof that he was simply stuck? Sleep didn't come easily, and when it did, it brought no rest. Only the heavy awareness that the future he believed in was gone, and he had no replacement ready. This wasn't just failure, it was the loss of meaning. And when meaning collapses, even the strongest discipline begins to crack. In the days that followed, he lived in repetition, not routine, but replay. Every moment of the past became something to inspect, something to correct. He revisited old conversations, paused at decisions he wished he had made faster, braver, differently. His mind became a courtroom, and he was both the accused and the judge. Waiting had changed its shape. It was no longer quiet. It was loud, restless, unforgiving. He woke with the urge to fix what could no longer be touched, to force an outcome that had already closed its doors. Letting go felt impossible, because letting go felt like admitting that all those months of discipline and patience had led nowhere. So he held on. He refreshed messages that would not come. He kept notes from plans that no longer existed. He told himself that if he stayed attached long enough, something might reverse itself. Hope became a form of control, fragile, desperate, exhausting. The town continued its slow rhythm, indifferent to his internal chaos. People passed him, unaware of the storm he carried silently. He smiled when spoken to, nodded at familiar faces, and returned home to the same quiet room where the past still lived. Guilt settled in next. Guilt for wanting more. Guilt for not being enough. Guilt for believing that patience alone could protect him from failure. He began to see his waiting as a flaw, as proof that he had hesitated when others moved. And yet, despite the pain, he refused to release what was lost. Because when we cling to the past, it gives us the illusion of purpose. It keeps us busy. It keeps us from feeling the emptiness beneath. But emptiness, patient and persistent, waited for him too, and it was drawing closer. There comes a point when even resistance grows tired. For him, it arrived on a night so quiet it felt unreal. No music, no screens, no distractions left to negotiate with the silence. The town slept, and for the first time in weeks, he stopped trying to outrun his thoughts. He sat on the edge of his bed, surrounded by the familiar shape of his life. Unchanged, unresponsive. The past no longer argued back. The future no longer invited questions. All that remained was the present, bare and heavy. This was not dramatic sadness. It was emptiness, the kind that doesn't ache. It echoes. He realized then how alone he had become. Not because people had left, but because he had withdrawn into his own waiting, carrying it like a private burden. Discipline had disappeared. Motivation felt like a language he no longer spoke. Even hope, once fragile, now rested somewhere beyond reach. He didn't cry. There was no energy left for that. He simply sat there, breathing, letting the stillness settle into his bones. And in that stillness, something subtle shifted. For the first time, he stopped asking when. When will it change? When will I be enough? When will the waiting end? Instead, a quieter question surfaced. What if this is the moment I stop fighting what is? It wasn't relief, not yet. But it was honesty. And honesty, when it finally arrives, creates space. Space for healing. Space for letting go. Space for a different kind of strength. One that doesn't demand answers immediately. This was the lowest point, not because it was painful, but because it was empty. And emptiness, strange as it seems, is where rebirth finds room to begin. The reminder did not come as a revelation. It came as a moment so small he almost missed it. The next morning, he went for a walk without intention. No goal, no steps counted, just movement for the sake of breathing different air. The town, washed in early light, looked softer than usual, less demanding. Near a quiet bench, an older man sat feeding crumbs to birds. He moved slowly, carefully, as if each gesture mattered. When one bird startled and flew away, the man smiled. Not disappointed, not rushed, just patient. Funny thing, the man said, noticing him watching. They always come back when you stop trying to control them. The words were simple, almost casual, but they landed heavily. They spoke for a moment, nothing profound. The weather, the quiet, how mornings used to feel longer. Before leaving, the man added gently, "Waiting isn't wasted time. It's where we learn how little force life actually needs." He walked away before the sentence could be questioned. He stood there, alone again, but something had shifted. Not clarity, not motivation, just a soft crack in the wall he had built around his patience. For weeks he had treated waiting like a problem to solve, something to endure until it ended. He had gripped time tightly, afraid that loosening his hold would mean losing everything. But watching the birds return, without being chased, without being summoned, something became clear. What he called stillness was not abandonment. What he called delay was not denial. And what he called weakness might have been strength, learning a quieter shape. He continued his walk, slower now. The waiting was still there, but it no longer felt like an enemy. He didn't wake up changed. There was no sudden surge of motivation, no dramatic sense of rebirth. What returned instead was something smaller and far more honest. He began to stay with discomfort instead of escaping it, to stay with unfinished answers instead of forcing conclusions. The waiting remained, but it softened when he stopped resisting it. His discipline returned quietly, stripped of urgency. Morning walks without expectations, work done without counting outcomes, rest without guilt. He no longer treated effort as a bargain with the future. He treated it as presence. Some days still felt heavy. On those days, he allowed them to be. Healing, he learned, was not about feeling better. It was about being less afraid of feeling anything at all. He started letting go in subtle ways. Old notes were put away. Conversations stopped being replayed. He caught himself when his thoughts rushed ahead and gently brought them back. Not with force, with patience. And slowly something unfamiliar emerged. Peace. Not the kind that celebrates arrival, but the kind that accepts the road. His life had not suddenly moved forward. The town remained slow. The outcomes remained uncertain, but he was no longer measuring his worth by speed. Waiting, once a punishment, became practice, a training ground for strength that didn't need proof. A space where purpose was not chased but clarified. He realized that courage was not always about action. Sometimes it was about restraint, about trusting that growth could happen beneath the surface, unseen. The pause that once frightened him now felt like a teacher, and though the journey was far from over, he sensed something important had begun. Not a new chapter of success, but a deeper chapter of self-respect. He was learning how to stay. Growth, when it is real, is never left unchallenged. Just as peace began to feel familiar, old habits returned quietly. The urge to rush, the need to measure, the fear that stillness might turn into stagnation. On certain mornings, impatience knocked again, disguised as ambition. He noticed it in his thoughts first. You're falling behind. Others are moving faster. How long can you really wait? The voices sounded convincing because they were familiar. They had once driven him. They had once given him energy. But now he paused before listening. Some days he slipped. He checked timelines that no longer mattered, compared his journey to someone else's progress, questioned whether patience was just comfort dressed up as wisdom. And yet, he returned to his walks, returned to his breath, returned to doing the work without demanding applause from the future. This time, consistency wasn't fueled by fear. It was anchored in trust. That was the difference. Waiting tested him not by adding weight, but by offering temptation. The temptation to abandon what was working quietly for what promised faster results. Strength revealed itself in his ability to remain, not rigid, not stubborn, but grounded. Time continued its slow movement, unchanged by his internal victories. But inside, something steady formed. A sense of self that did not collapse when progress felt invisible. He learned that discipline was not about control. It was about commitment. Commitment to the journey, even when motivation faded. Commitment to patience, even when no one noticed. And for the first time, waiting no longer felt like standing still. It felt like walking a path only he could see. One morning, he woke without the familiar weight on his chest. Nothing extraordinary had happened, No message arrived. No door swung open. The town looked the same, slow, quiet, unremarkable, and yet something inside him had settled into place. He moved through his day with an ease he didn't recognize at first. Not excitement, not relief, just steadiness, the kind that doesn't ask to be named. Waiting was still part of his life, but it no longer defined it. It walked beside him now, no longer ahead of him, no longer behind. He had stopped treating time like an opponent to defeat and started seeing it as a companion that reveals what rushing hides. Purpose appeared differently than he expected. It wasn't a destination. It wasn't a title or an outcome. It was the way he showed up, present, patient, awake. It was the quiet strength of choosing integrity over urgency, depth over speed. He noticed beauty he had missed before: morning light on old buildings, the sound of footsteps on empty streets, the comfort of doing one thing fully instead of many things hurriedly. Failure no longer felt like a verdict, it felt like instruction. Healing was no longer something he waited for, it was something he practiced daily through acceptance. For the first time in a long while, he trusted himself. Not because he had succeeded, but because he had endured without losing heart. The pause that once terrified him had done its work. He hadn't arrived anywhere new, but he had become someone new. And that, he understood now, was the true rebirth. Maybe this story feels familiar, because somewhere in your life, you are waiting too. Waiting for clarity, for healing, for proof that your effort is not invisible. And in that waiting, you've wondered if patience is costing you time, if stillness means falling behind. But here is what this journey quietly teaches. Waiting is not weakness. It is strength, learning how to breathe. Discipline is not force. It is choosing to return even when motivation leaves. Failure is not a dead end. It is a teacher that speaks softly to those who listen. Letting go is not loss. It is space made for peace. Purpose is not found by rushing. It reveals itself when we stay present. Healing is not an event. It is a practice. And rebirth does not arrive loudly. It unfolds when we stop resisting who we are becoming. If your life feels paused, it does not mean you are forgotten. Some transformations happen beneath the surface, where no one claps and no timeline can measure progress. So don't lose heart in waiting. Trust that the journey is shaping you. Trust that patience is building something deeper than speed ever could. And trust that one morning, quiet and ordinary, you will realize you are no longer the person who began this road. You will still be walking, but you will be walking with peace. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to reflect, to share it with someone who might need it, and to stay connected for more stories like this. Your waiting matters, and so do you.